Geek Legion of Doom is so romantic.
They Will Kill You is a horror comedy that stars Zazie Beetz from Deadpool 2. You've also got Patricia Arquette, Heather Graham and Tom Felton in this one. Now this was released the same time as Ready or Not 2. And although I didn't review Ready or Not 2, I actually did watch it and, quite enjoyed it as I did the first one. And I've now watched They Will Kill You. And these movies both have a very, very similar premise. So this one, Zazie Beetz plays a woman looking for her sister. And she ends up kind of going into this kind of large building, 100 or so years old building, which is full of these kind of rich people. And these rich people are actually Satanists who have made a deal with the devil to become immortal. And they don't know Zazie Beetz is actually kind of looking for her sister. She's kind of posing as a maid. But they actually intend to sacrifice her. Now, Zazie Beetz has no idea about, the fact that they're so Satanist here, and they have no idea that Zazie Beetz's character is actually a hardened fighter who has spent 9 or so years in prison fighting and becoming a tough, kick-ass babe. And now these two forces will clash as Zazie Beetz tries to find her sister whilst being pursued by Satanists who cannot be killed. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it. What works? And we will be referring to Ready or Not 2 to a degree in this one because it's such a comparable film, and as I say, it came out at the same kind of time. But what does this movie have that makes it in the plus column? I think this one is far more over the top than Ready or Not. Lots more over the top violence. This reminds me a little bit of Kill Bill in a way. And there are some kind of, dare I say, Tarantino-esque flourishes in the movie. Not the whole movie, but there are just elements here and there that will kind of remind you of a little bit of Tarantino-esque ultra-violence. And the kind of the gore here is kind of comic book, but kind of quite out there and sort of more violent than one might expect potentially from a movie that was, probably, when it was advertised being a little bit more sort of comical and silly. So although this movie is quite gory in there, we see people getting split in half and all sorts of things, and it's done in a kind of like comic book tongue-in-cheek way. So therefore, those of you who have slightly queasy stomachs might not be quite as grossed out with the kind of the ultra violence on display. It's all sort of done in a sort of somewhat of a jokey manner, but it's nonetheless loads of blood getting squirted out everywhere and sort of variety of decapitations and people's limbs getting chopped off here and there. So there's quite an over-the-top violence to it. When people fight, these people are getting launched over the other side of the room. So there's lots of kind of like over-the-top violence and things. So you can enjoy this spectacle, the bloody spectacle. If bloody spectacle is what you want, then this movie will deliver that. And once it gets going, it really doesn't let up. This movie is really just scene after scene of Zazie Beetz getting into a variety of different scrapes while our kind of satanic characters are wandering around this kind of large building trying to find her and things like this. And then we kind of have our final fight, so to speak, which again takes it up one notch more, I have to say, to kind of like some quite fun spectacle as well. There's some interesting stuff done here with the mythology. This one, compared to, say, Ready or Not, it's a little bit more overt in its kind of supernatural elements, let's just say. So you have a bit more of the kind of like the supernatural on screen than necessarily the its competitor. So again, it's a little bit more arguably overt horror on display to a degree, certainly in regards to you know, what's kind of going on. And I think some of how they've kind of dealt with the kind of the deal with the devil kind of plot lines is quite interesting, and it's quite a little fun idea about the mechanics of how that kind of all works and things like this. And Zazie Beetz is you know, very likable as our kind of our main sort of character, you know, and she's kind of, we get the flashback here and there, sort of showing you the kind of the life that she's had that's led her to become this sort of very sort of tough person. So we kind of, you know, we can understand to a degree how she's become this kind of, you know, person who will absolutely will not stop, and even when she gets kind of beaten down and everything like that. So it's a very simple story. It's very sort of easy to follow and everything like that. So you can enjoy this for some very uncomplicated fun, and it's stylistically interesting. As I say, I think the effect here is they've hit a good balance between being sort of quite over the top and bloody, but also not being necessarily particularly sort of squeamish at the same time. So you can kind of watch this and just enjoy it for kind of the very sort of B-movie sort of star film that this actually is. Where this movie doesn't work, and again, well, this is where we'll more compare it to, I would say, the Ready or Not movies. I think this movie lacks characterization when you compare it, certainly when you compare it to that film, which is a very easy comparison. I really didn't feel like I knew Zazie Beetz' character particularly well when you compare to Samara Weaving's character in the Ready or Not films. Our antagonists, again, you look at the Ready or Not films, you feel like you get to know them a lot better than maybe the characters here. So I think the movie is a little lacking in sort of characterization. The tone of the movie might not be for everyone because it is so over the top. I mean, Ready or Not obviously was as well, but this one is more so. So those of you who want more of a sort of a grounded movie, maybe put off by the sort of the plain silliness that this one kind of leans into a lot more. I will say I think the movie is a little bit kind of, there's lots of kind of fight scenes here, but I felt it was kind of fight scene after fight scene after fight scene. And as fun as they are, you know, maybe I was wanting a little bit more from it in regards to sort of meat on the bones, a little bit more sort of danger, a little bit more sort of feeling like Zazie Beetz' character is going, you know, she obviously takes a lot of damage and stuff, but you never really feel like she's in any genuine peril because she's kind of like this unstoppable machine, and she's only human, and it's what she could go through is it doesn't really seem to faze her all that much, to be honest with you. So you know, and it's, again, there was a little bit lacking in the sort of plot-wise. Ultimately, I think, again, when you certainly compare it to the Ready or Not films, which had quieter moments and I think a little bit more kind of going on in regards to its narrative. Not that not either of them were particularly complicated, but I just felt the here it's more or less kind of like fight scene after fight scene with a little bit of a break, a little bit of dialogue on some more fight scenes. And it's one of these things where there's lots of characters who are, we're meant to believe are immortal, but seemingly just line up to get sort of like mullered by Zazie Beetz' character. And, you know, why aren't they attacking her en masse and things like this? They seem to be doing it one at a time so she can kind of take them out in spectacular fashion. But again, it's never, again, you know, you're not supposed to think too much about it, and just enjoy the kind of like the carnage on screen. And that is certainly, you know, it's fun to a large degree, but I felt this movie was a little bit lacking in meat on the bones, for me at least. So although I think this movie is an above average film, I don't think it's like as memorable necessarily, certainly in regards to its story. Maybe more memorable in regards to some of its visuals perhaps than Ready or Not, but for overall I would probably go back and watch Ready or Not before I watch this again. So I'll give this one a 6 out of 10. It's an enjoyable movie, it's an above average movie, it's a fun one. But there's not much to it, I didn't think. Anyway, what were your thoughts if you've seen it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.